Now, in terms of surgical planning, it's just as we have indicated, all the surgical fusion process was performed on the Dextroscope. All of our structures, all of our work of planning the operation were carried out preoperatively on the Dextroscope. All the resultant data sets were sent by the network to the intraoperative MRI suite. Our first case was done with the assistance of intraoperative MRI using the Polestar. Our second case was done with ultrasound guidance. The stealth station located within the suite was the device that uploaded the objects, and all the image fusion applets were not used on the stealth. All image fusion was performed on the Dextroscope. The DexView itself that was located in the operating room that gave us our 3D visualization was connected by the Ethernet to the stealth station. And all the location of surgical instruments were communicated by StealthLink, a research project of Medtronic, to transmit location in real time. The DexView was then capable of stereoscopic depiction, and the general overview was as follows. Here we have the radiodextra application in the Dextroscope. We were planning all of our surgical interventions in that fashion. The surgical plan and the virtual surgery were performed preoperatively, usually the day before. All data was then served in a VI format. That was transported not only to the stealth station in the operating room, but was also transported to the DexView. So at this point, the topology is such that we actually have two independent devices with the same data sets working with each other, and the location of information was being transmitted by the Trion to the DexView for display. This was created intraoperatively using the StealthLink application and the Trion basically powering the DexView in real time. Now, the benefit, therefore, is with a CRT display in the operating room using polarized glasses, the location of surgical instruments is determined by the Trion, can be depicted on stereoscopic images in real time with the surgeon equipped with polarized glasses. And so basically all the benefits of the three-dimensional applet that you see preoperatively can now be achieved intraoperatively. Now, we added one additional component, and that was the True Vision device. This is a group out of Santa Barbara, California. It is a high-resolution stereoscopic camera system, which is coupled to a dual projector system. Here, stereoscopic vision is used to basically visualize microscopic anatomy using the same polarized glasses that are employed by the stealth station and the DexView. The camera system itself is rather impressive. It has a 1280 by 1024 resolution running at 30 frames per second in stereoscopic mode. Literally, this is a device that places about 1 gig of data every 3 to 4 seconds over its dedicated linkage to its camera system. The display component was particularly interesting in that it was a high-resolution dual projector system. The two projectors were equipped with polarizing filters. The resolution was downsampled a little bit, and the microscope input to the projection system was accomplished to a DVI interface, and the DexView connection was accomplished by RGB connection. And this is actually the dual projectors in the operating room with the polarizing filters. Now, I'll be the first to admit that this device is somewhat large. However, this would be seen as version 1.0 of this technology. The compelling aspect of this for our particular application was right down here is the Polestar, and we were able to place the projection system at the 10 Gauss line without any distortion of the resultant images. And so here is basically the lineup with DexView, Stealth Station, and the projection system. We did a second case with a posterior fossa. Here the change was a little bit different. Instead of having it alongside the body of the patient, we had the projection system above the patient's head with DexView and the Stealth Station in this location. Now, this device in its native environment serves as an alternative display technique to the Stealth. The stereoscopic projection was not only used for the projection of the virtual images, but also the macroscopic magnification as well. And we therefore had one display which inculcated both sources of information, the real images coming from the microscope and the virtual images coming from the DexView. Needless to say, with these two cases, the complex setup was quite notable. There were cables all over the place. However, this is not unexpected for a nascent technology such as what we're dealing with. It was my experience that the polarized glasses that we used throughout the case did not really impair visualization of the surgical field. And the very interesting thing is that we had the stealth station right next to the 3D location display, the projector system, and everybody who came into the room, including the surgeon and his assistant, were immediately drawn to the three-dimensional display. It was really a compelling display that literally leapt off the projection system in the operating room and really gave you a very firm sense of exactly where you were located at all times. Of interest that the microscopic application, the stereoscopic depiction of location, was also quite compelling. Now, this is the view that you would get in this situation. This is the first case with the intraoperative MRI situation. Here we have the patient in the MRI-compatible head holder with a coil, and here we have the navigational system depicting exactly where the probe is. In this instance, we actually created a virtual craniotomy preoperatively, precisely delineating the confines of the tumor. We actually got a CT scan post-operatively, and the CT scan showing the defect post-op mimicked the virtual craniotomy we did. So in a way, reality mimicked virtual surgery that was done before the surgery was performed. Here is a magnified view of what you see on the Dex view. Not only do you see the stereoscopic depiction of location, but you also see the crosshairs in the more traditional orthogonal view. And you can selectively turn on or turn off visual three-dimensional objects so that you can have, in this case, a crosshair. It's a little bit dark, but you can actually see the crosshair, in this case, of a low-grade glioma right below the the speech cortex in the temporal lobe. And you can also use your probe as a cropping device so that as you go into the tumor, the brain will crop away, demonstrating, in this case, that you're beyond the last remnants of the tumor, which are located in green. Now, this is the posterior fossa case. The fascinating thing about this is that the microscope was actually above us. We had myself as a surgeon and an assistant, both looking at the virtual reality of where we were. In this case, this was a metastatic CA to the posterior fossa. And this is a depiction of what we were seeing in the operating room. This is 2D, parenthetically. This shows our probe. This shows our surgical plan. We have an excellent depiction of exactly where the transverse sinus and the sigmoid sinuses are located, and the tumor, obviously, in this case, in the cerebellar hemisphere. We were able to rotate the image in real time to get a three-dimensional, a side view during the case. And then as we started to proceed through the tumor, we had a cutaway view so that we could actually see as the tumor was being resected and we were approaching the anterior aspect of the tumor. The interesting thing is that the microscope was actually suspended above the surgical field, and you'll notice that neither one of us is actually looking through the microscope at this point. The microscope is simply a holder for the camera system. And the benefit of this is that both of us were able to do the operation, to actually operate in real time, both with stereoscopic vision, basically unimpeded. My situation is rather comfortable. I don't have to cran my neck looking through a microscope. My surgical assistant is a little height impaired, so he had to kind of cran his head back. But if I had a taller resident, things would look a lot more comfortable. This is the type of situation where we have stereoscopic images coming out of the microscope system. Again, you cannot appreciate these unless we had the particular projection system, the combination of that. But now we are actually talking about the combination of the virtual and the real. We're actually flipping back and forth between the virtual and real very seamlessly. What we would like to do with future developments of this device is to actually use the surgical instruments as they're being tracked in the operating room to, again, edit the virtual object, just like the virtual objects on the current Dextroscope, so that we can actually reflect the current situation in terms of tumor resection using the surgical instruments as pointers in the virtual world. Clearly, with our interest in intraoperative MRI, we would like to be able to use intraoperative imaging to elastically deform not only the real object, but the virtual object as well, so the virtual object will remain with high fidelity to the reality. And perhaps most interestingly, By the use of microscope tracking, there is a very real possibility that we can take the real images coming from the microscope in stereoscopic display, blend them with the virtual object coming from DexView, and be able to alter the transparency up and down of the real versus the virtual, so that we literally have an overlay of all of our preoperative information directly onto the surgical field. Literally then, the surgery would be completely conducted with a microscope suspended over the surgical field. You would actually use that combined virtual and real image in real time to do your surgery and to perform the operation with full knowledge of every important structure that was depicted on your preoperative images. With that, I'd like to switch over to the, do we have the second case up, Raul? Now again, I'll be the first to say that these cases from a technical standpoint are not particularly challenging, but again, with the short development pattern that we were dealing with, it was relatively difficult to wait until something really complicated came in. So what we're dealing with is relatively simple operations in terms of these initial two procedures. Here we have this case. This turned out to be a low-grade oligodendroglioma. We seem to do a lot of that in our practice. Here we have a tumor as indicated in green. Here we have a CT scan. This defect was actually produced preoperatively by using the drilling tool that's a part of the Dextroscope package. We were then able to drill away and show the tumor. Here we had our preoperative surgical plan. As part of our surgical task in this particular instance, we definitely wanted to avoid the vein of Lebet. This patient had a significant vein of Lebet going just anterior to the tumor. There was also another vein that we wanted to avoid in the posterior margin of the tumor. And now if we rotate and look at the superior aspect of the tumor, there, perfect. You see that the superior aspect of the tumor is relatively smooth. It was our feeling preoperatively that this probably reflected a sulcal margin. This was actually confirmed intraoperatively. If we look at the posterior margin of the tumor now, rotate to the posterior margin, a little bit more. There you go. The interesting thing is that this was also smooth. And now if you rotate to the medial margin, you'll see that this was also smooth. And indeed, this tumor was actually bounded on three sides by a sulcus, all identified preoperatively with the Dextroscope application, and all confirmed intraoperatively. Post-operative MRI then on this patient immediately in the 24-hour period afterwards demonstrated a complete resection of this tumor, and the patient actually was discharged home the next day with no neurological deficit. Now, if we can go, let me see if we got. Okay. With that, those are the two cases that I wanted to point up to you. Any questions you might have about this particular application?
Did you do any intraoperative imaging in that first case? And did you have to shut down and reboot the systems and the connections? And what was that whole process like? Was the registration maintained, et cetera?
In terms of the intraoperative MRI, yes, obviously we did have to shut down the systems. The registration, however, was maintained. The registration is a rigid registration. As long as you don't move the dynamic referencing system, you're okay. In terms of the cabling, basically intraoperatively what you were dealing with was an Ethernet cable between DexView and Stealth. That was, you basically unplug it behind the Odin and close the trap door. That was that. And then the other thing we had to do was unplug the cables going from the projection system to the DexView. Those cables just, you don't want to have that sort of antenna in the Polestar situation. But with that, we were able to achieve a susceptible signal to noise. The only problem, as you can imagine, is, it was crowded, to say the least, in the operating room. We had people ducking underneath projection systems and everything else. So there was a lot of stuff going on in terms of territory. But in terms of noise, we were able to achieve a good noise ratio.